today's topic really runs to the very heart of what we represent here at Ananda and other traditions as well, which is the inner reality. Recently, our spiritual directors worldwide issued a caution to all of us to not get engaged with the polarization in social media, attacking this or attacking that and so forth, and to realize that what we represent is the inner path, the inner kingdom. I don't typically do this, but I was inspired. I'd like to read to you a couple of things, because it's the inner consciousness within ourselves, to the degree we contact it consciously, that gives us the power. And the world around us is rapidly, descending into chaos. Jesus Christ told his disciples that when all these signs and all these things come, to be warned. And whether or not you see that in a predictive way isn't so important, which is what the devotee, the seeker of truth, does when assailed by outward circumstances, is to seek the truth within ourselves. Now, from the famous poem that most of you will recognize, Auguries of Innocence by William Blake, part of it is to see a world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wildflower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour. This is the great teaching all the great sages of East and West down through the ages have averred. Yogananda, whose teachings we follow here, Paramahansa Yogananda, whose autobiography of a yogi is now world famous, has a poem I also have always loved. Somewhere on the internet, it's in his voice, but that was a little complicated for us, so I'm going to read a portion of it, because it affirms the reality is within us. It's called Where I Am. Not the lordly domes on high with tall heads, daring clouds and sky, nor alabaster shining floors, nor the rich organ's awesome roar, nor rainbowed windows' beauty quaint, with colossal chronicles told in paint, nor torch, nor incense's curling soar, nor pure-dressed children of the choir, nor well-planned sermon, nor loud-tongued prayer. Call me there, the richly carven door through which all pomp and pride have poured. I deign not through to go, but come incognito. The stony polished altar or narrow builded sermon seat, too narrow seemed to hold my large, large body for retreat. A humble magnet call, a whisper by the brook, on grassy altar small, there I have my nook. I remember listening to, what's his name? Who's the leader of the Tibetan Buddhists?
Dalai Lama.
Dalai Lama, yeah, years ago. He gave a talk, and he talked about how someday there would be no need for places, churches, and places to go, because the consciousness, we are told in the higher ages, long ago and long in front of us to come, people live in that altar within us. And as Jesus Christ himself said, the kingdom of heaven is within us, within you. This is the teaching that has come out into the world, slowly, of course, because our consciousness is so incredibly outward. Sri Yukteswar Yogananda's guru, who wrote only one book that I know of, in the introduction, turned the entire calendar of history on its head, describing how we now have entered a new age of consciousness. Well, there are some good parts of it, but the part I want to emphasize, because it's more interesting, is that there will be no stability in the next 2,000 or so years. And No place on earth, he said, will be safe. This is an age of great restlessness, of individual ambition and self-seeking. And the only antidote to that is the awakening of our interdependence. Tat Tvamasi, thou art that. Aham Brahmasi, thou art the Brahman. Or, as Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. This is the antidote planned by Yogananda, revealed in his autobiography, that Jesus Christ and Babaji, the great Mahavatar, have planned the spiritual technique of salvation for this increasingly restless age into which we have come. And it is to seek the shelter within ourselves. This is the essence of yoga. I also wanted to read one of my favorite books, as my friend Bruce Davis enjoys also, is the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. And verse 31 was one of Swami Kriyananda's, our founder, one of his favorite. This is his commentary on those great verses. Yogananda taught about the Rubaiyat, which was so misunderstood in Western culture when it came into English translations by Edwin Arnold Fitzgerald, or whatever his name was, that it was taken as a poem of hedonism, that during the Sufi period long ago, they would disguise their wisdom using the metaphors of wine and human love and various things like that. It was purposely done, as in fact, this is always the case. The poets down through the ages, the great epic of India, the Mahabharata, all of these things disguise the truth. The only scripture I know of that is sort of cold-hearted is the Yoga Sutras, but even those don't really tell you anything. You need a teacher to unravel the thread that goes through them. But I want to read from 31, being an Irish poet at heart. If I can, here it is. This is Rubaiyat 31. Up from earth's center through the seventh gate I rose, and on the throne of Saturn sate, and many knots unraveled by the road, but not the knot of human death and fate. Swamiji gives this paraphrase: through 7 gates of the chakras, I passed on my long journey toward omnipresence. At the last of them, the mighty cranial light, I paused a while to view the road behind and before me. Many victories had I won along the way, many profound insights have I gained. I had banished satanic ignorance from the kingdom of my consciousness. I no longer lived under the sway of physical desire. But I found myself even now, however, not completely free from the influence of karmic law. And then just briefly, because this is one of the longest explanations in this book, Kriyananda writes, the nerves are the channels through which life force enables the mind and the body to interact with the world. As the life force moves down the subtle spine and out to the body and senses, the mind is outward drawn. Sense stimulation from within impels one to seek fulfillment in sense pleasures without. The same nervous system, however, constitutes the one and only path to spiritual enlightenment, regardless of formal religious affiliation. When the energy can be coaxed to reverse its flow from the senses up to the brain, it reveals to our consciousness another world. This stimulation of the nerves at their inner source awakens the desire for fulfillment and for self-realization. This is the profound mystery that is being revealed in words that we can understand rather than poetry and parables and such as that. You know, in Revelations, the last book of the New Testament, the first couple of chapters are deeply esoteric, deeply yogic. You know, I was turned on the Lord's day and I saw just like in the Mount Tabor in the Transfiguration, he saw the astral body white with energy here and so forth. I'm not going to read all of that. But within the Bible, Ezekiel, I was upon the holy mountain of God. What's the holy mountain? It's the inner spine. And was upon the holy mountain amidst the stones of fire. The stones of fire is the light and the energy of the chakras, which reveal to us this other world. Now, you learn, though, most of you have taken, many of you have taken the Raja Yoga course, which Murli teaches, and that textbook is a profound, one of the most profound classics in Raja. Study the inner astrology. It's also said that when we are born, the so-called outer astrology of the natal chart that gets cast is actually but a reflection of the inner astrology within us. Whereas the seventh chakra, where the throne of which he refers to in Rubaiyat, is the seat of the soul, as Teresa of Avila revealed. She said, my energy was shot like a gun up to the seat of the soul. She was a great mystic. The Christian mystics knew these things but had no tradition of continual adaptation, continual revelation of this inner world. This was the role of the yogis of India down through the Dark Ages, to develop this knowledge and then in our age to bring it out. And so that soul is not involved, like our guardian angel or like Krishna in the Mahabharata, is not involved. It's the 6 lower chakras that contain our karma, contain all of the energies of past lives, the commitments that we have made to want this and not like this, to have done this to so-and-so, and so for all of that stuff. Billions of little vrittis are contained in the software of the astral body, which survives the death of the physical body. And then in turn, as we have more things to work out, brings us back into physical manifestation. And we continue the great journey. In God, there's no time or space. We think of billions of years or what have you. As Jesus said, before Abraham was, I am. And he wasn't just talking about himself personally. He was talking about you and me. We are as old as God. For we are made, as Genesis says, in the image of Spirit. What that is, being an infinite, can never be defined. Our human tendencies, naturally and appropriately, and even efficiently, if you will, cast into the mold of anthropomorphic being, that divine. Yogananda would say, God is the guru, not I. And so whether it's deities or somebody on a cross, whatever it may be, we are compelled by our own very nature, by our own imprisonment in the human form, and our commitment to that imprisonment down through countless lifetimes, to imagine the best we can imagine as the goal is a perfect being of one sort or another. And yet in the great tradition of East and West, God is no such things. But as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, to imagine the absolute is frankly impossible for embodied beings. We can only imagine something a little better than ourselves, hopefully. I've always enjoyed that story Swami Kriyananda, our teacher, told. I've said it before, but he was on a tour of Australia and had given a lecture of some sort. Afterwards, some Aussie comes up to him and says, "Oh, I'm an atheist. What do you have to say to me?" And Swami Kriyananda said, if you can imagine for yourself the best version of yourself, the highest that you can imagine for yourself, let that be your Ishtadevata, your conception of perfection. And that will guide you. Because God is, as Anandamoyi Ma, the great woman saint in India, said, it is and it isn't. Well, what does that tell you? Not very much. And yet it tells you everything. So we have to progress from where we are. The love of Christ as Jesus, the love of Krishna, Buddha, etc. For many of us as disciples of Yogananda and his lineage. You know, that kind of, some people would call it idolatry. There's nothing wrong with it. It's only when you judge other people who don't share your particular faith that it becomes impure, if you will. But to love God in some form, I remember Swami Kriyananda said that when he was new to this path in his early 20s, he couldn't imagine what Divine Mother looked like, because here in the West, you know, we don't really have Goddess Kali or Parvati and all these wonderful images from India. We have the Virgin Mary, of course, which is quite beautiful. And I'll say that the appearance of the apparitions of the Virgin Mary are no coincidence. It's part of Divine Mother coming into this planet to lift us towards the Divine Feminine, to give us the compassion that our technology, our reason, our science cannot give us. But Swami, he said, all I could think of, he said, was my grandmother. So he would envision his grandmother as Divine Mother. And I wasn't so lucky in my life, but my Irish mother was a little bit on the stern side of things, which I guess I've inherited. But in any case, Swami said that, he said for us that Yogananda's mother, and if you've read the autobiography, as many of you have, you know how much he pined at the death of his mother at a young age, and how, with deep prayer and meditation, the Divine Mother appeared to him and said, I've always been your mother, through countless mothers down through countless ages. Through those two dark eyes, I have cared for you. And so Swamiji, because for us being more yogic, for whom, I guess in India they call it idol worship, and Catholics have statues, it's all the same. For yogis, we go within. And so in the generic state of things, and as Swamiji once said, in people he met in India, said there are yogis who, and even Lahiri Mahashai did not participate in idol worship. There are yogis who don't appear to have any devotion, but whose minds are, I think of maybe Zen Buddhism sort of as a, I don't know, an image or something that you can, whose minds are so concentrated, so focused, that the Ishtadevata, the Supreme Lord, whether in form, in consciousness, in infinity, you cannot define this, will appear. And the natural love of the heart, as Sri Yukteswar said, who was himself a great Jnana yogi, will appear. The paths are many. No one can define them for you. And yet, coming into our planet at this time is something that has never happened before in the history of humanity, as we at least know it, which is the inner kingdom, the inner path, and where we suspend time and place every time you go into perfect stillness. You've transcended karma. There's no karma in perfection. There's no karma. Be still and know I am. In the secret nook of the heart, there is no karma. There is no ego. There is perfect stillness. When you dip into that baptism, that stream of pranava in the inner astral spine, and bathe your consciousness, and go into the tree of life, the Ashvata tree, as it is said in India. Then you achieve baptism, purification, and repeated entry into that sacred kingdom. That's what the Garden of Eden was, the tree of life. And that's what's referred to in Revelations repeatedly. And I will watch by the posts of the door. Those are the chakras. I go into meditation. I rest there. There is so much wisdom and power. You know, when you take an aspirin for a headache, you don't know what it's doing. Hopefully your headache goes away. So it is in the deeper teachings. As you go in through this inner kingdom, you may or may not have some of the experiences the yogis have had who have gone before you in terms of phenomenal experiences. But like that aspirin, it's doing its work silently. This is the greatest contribution. The greatest thing we can do for peace and harmony on this earth is to walk the inner path, to rise to that Mount Carmel, that Mount Kailash, that whatever it is, to lift the Kundalini energy, the entrenched mortality of our mortal delusion, to lift ourselves from our ego preoccupations. Every day, go into the stillness and bathe your consciousness in the pure living waters that are within us. Today's talk is the essence of what we represent here. It requires no outward affiliation, though the grace of the masters is the key to its success, but that you have to discover for yourself. When the disciple is ready, the guru appears. That's an inner journey. If you're not ready, you're not ready. But don't stop trying. This topic, then, is the salvation of our planet. Because at the rate we're going, with everyone with their triggers on the red buttons right now, you see the headlines every day. One of those buttons is going to go off, I guarantee it. The only salvation, the only harbor of peace lies within you. The kingdom of heaven lies within. That's what this is all about. Okay.
Hriman has chosen this reading from Yogananda's book of prayer demands called Whispers from Eternity. And this is a special one because at the end of this, Yogananda says, I'll read that first because it involves us doing something. This demand especially should be repeated mentally with deep concentration until the prayer thought becomes fixed in your superconscious by the conviction born of deep faith. So as I do the reading, which I'll do twice, I invite you to sit up straight, close your eyes, gaze at the spiritual eye point between the eyebrows, which is the seat of superconsciousness. And more than listening to the words, imagine yourself repeating that mentally with deep conviction. Again, I'll read this twice. Demand for opening of the spiritual eye to find God in everything. My eyes are enthralled, O Father, with the beauty of earthly flowers, with life's passing scenes, and with the sailing, silent clouds. Everywhere, all I see hints at thy hidden presence. Open that eye in me, which sees only thee. With that gaze, may I behold thee above, beneath, all around, within and outside me. Teach me in all things to see only thee. Open in me that eye which beholds everywhere thy hidden but ever subtly reigning wonder. My eyes are enthralled, O Father, with the beauty of earthly flowers, with life's passing scenes, and with the sailing silent clouds. Everywhere, all I see hints at thy hidden presence. Open that eye in me, which sees only thee. With that gaze, may I behold thee above, beneath, all around, within and outside me. Teach me in all things to see only Thee. Open in me that eye which beholds everywhere Thy hidden but ever subtly reigning wonder. Om Shanti.